Sorry, I have to back up. By that point, there's no embarrassment about your boobs because you're showing them to everybody. Math is hard. And yeah, oh my gosh, so many memories. I got cancer for Christmas. Hey there, it's Stephanie from Mommy Standard Time, and today the meatloaf's in the oven. My family took off, the house is quiet. I actually have my hair done kind of today, and I thought, you know what? I just need to sit down and tell you guys my cancer story because honestly, it's just part of who I am. It is what has driven all of my life choices ever since, and it's something that continues to affect me. So you'll hear me talk about my cancer experience. I'll take you along to oncology appointments. I don't know. I just figured you would probably want to hear it from me from the beginning, kind of my cancer history. This is not scripted. I didn't write any of this down. You're gonna hear my dog's pitter patter, all of those things. You might notice some editing because I might forget something and say it, and then I have to splice it back where it belongs in the story. So sorry, but I'm just gonna sit down and blurt it out. So in order for you to kind of know, I guess, the backstory, I need to tell you a bit of my history before I had cancer. So I am a teacher by trade. I was a special education teacher for 10 years, and we had our first son, our first child, we call him Buddy here on YouTube. So Buddy was born in 2007 while I was working. And then I got pregnant with Minnie, and at the time I had her, that's when we were like, okay, I need to be home. And we ended up moving and some other stuff. But while we had the two young kids, I did stay home for a period of time. Now, after we moved, I kind of got, not roped into, but I took a sub job because I was still substitute teaching here and there. And I took a substitute teaching job, and it was a long-term sub job, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the school. I loved the principal, super supportive. My assistants were fabulous. The kids were awesome. And I thought, you know, Minnie's a little older. She was about 2 at that point. And I was like, you know, we could handle this. I could go back to work. So I did. And I worked for a few more years until Minnie was 5. And then I got pregnant. And at this point, I kind of started having this internal struggle because we knew that there was a big gap between our older 2 and Ladybug. And we were like, okay, we don't really want Ladybug to be on her own. So we're gonna do, because we had our first 2 kind of close together in family planning mode, we were like, okay, so we'll have 3, 4 close together. And so while I was teaching full time, I had Ladybug in September of 2015. And my milk didn't come in on one side. And I just figured, I'm getting old. I'm in my 30s, right? And my body just didn't want to produce milk on that one side. And so, and my nipple had kind of, you know, I'm sorry if this is TMI, but when your body prepares for childbirth, your body does all sorts of weird stuff. And so like one nipple was kind of inverted and the other one wasn't. And so the kind of inverted one, obviously Ladybug didn't like. And then because she didn't like it, she didn't latch on. So then my milk didn't produce and all of that. And we thought, it's kind of weird, but whatever. And so I did have an ultrasound done because my OBGYN, I was kind of complaining to her about it. And she goes, I feel like I feel a lump directly below your nipple, like directly below your nipple. And she's like, I think you should have an ultrasound. So at the time, you know, here I am with my infant. My husband drove me to the appointment, and I look at the little sheet and it says lump in right breast. And I remember thinking, ooh, and I just got this pit in my stomach, like, should I be more concerned about this? I just figured this was a milk thing. So I had my ultrasound. The tech said, I see no sign of your body like trying to produce milk. There's no clogged ducts, there's nothing. So I just accepted it. Like, okay, my body's just gonna produce milk on one side. There was nothing else on the ultrasound. Nothing else showed up. And so I worked that year full time. I went back to work after maternity, a very short maternity leave. Special ed teacher. My daughter didn't take a bottle. So my parents, who were our daycare provider, they brought her to me 2 to 3 times a day to nurse. And that was one of the most stressful years of my life. And the only thing by the end of that year that I felt peace about was I need to step back. I need to be home. We've got to move forward with my husband's promotion because he could promote, but we never wanted to because it involved a move. We were in my hometown, surrounded by family. Heck, my parents were our daycare provider. Like, we had a pretty good setup. And so we didn't want to move. But I just felt like, okay, if we're going to be a one-income family, then you need to promote. We're going to have to move. So I put in my notice at the end of that school year. And the full summer, we just like went crazy getting our house ready for the market, getting our house ready to sell. And hubby, he was going on interviews. He'd been with the company for a while, and he was on the top of the list at each time he interviewed. But for some reason, they would just it would be between him and another guy, and they would just pick the other guy. And it was starting to get really disheartening. And so by the end of the summer, it was like, okay, do we keep trying? So I decided to substitute teach to kind of help make ends meet until the promotion came through, because there was going to be a pay raise. And then it would have been fine. And every time he interviewed, they said, you are going to get snatched up. Make sure your house is on the market. It's going to be any day now. You're going to get a position. And so we had the house on the market, and we had an offer, and that one fell through. And then we pretty much sold it again. And so we're talking just a matter of weeks. And hubby still didn't have a position. And so we talked to my parents, and we're like, okay, if the timing doesn't work out, if he doesn't have a position and our house is like closed, can we live with you for a little bit? And so that was kind of where we left it. Like, okay. And this is late fall. We're approaching the Christmas season, and we're moving. Our house is sold. Like, we're going to move in with my parents until hubby's job comes through. And so at this point, Ladybug is a year old, and I was done nursing, done with that. And the kids, the older kids, they kind of pieced together that because of the delay, that we would be able to have one final Christmas in our home that was home to them. We'd lived there for 4 or 5 years. And we were set to close like a day or two after Christmas. and so I was like, okay, we'll figure it out. So all the boxes and stuff were in the basement, and we pulled out Christmas. Like, we legit decorated for Christmas, put lights on the house. Like, it was our kids' last Christmas. We wanted to do that with them. But that kind of puts you behind when it comes to a move, right? Like, yeah, it wasn't awesome that we made that choice, but we did it. So fast forward to my birthday, which is December 13th. We decorated for Christmas. We were having the Christmas season. I was like slowly packing because there wasn't a whole lot I could do in the upstairs because I didn't want the house to be covered in boxes. We wanted it to be festive and cozy and, ready for Christmas. So it was my birthday, and I treated myself to a shower. I know, big birthday gift to myself. Now, if you've ever showered with a young toddler in the house, you know that you don't really take a shower. You just kind of have the shower curtain open and you're watching. I would always just bring toys or a bouncy chair or something for Ladybug to play while I showered. And so I'm showering, I'm watching her, that's how I shower. But on my birthday, she happened to be taking a nap, and I hadn't showered yet for the day. And I thought, I'm gonna take a long, awesome shower. And you guys, this is like honestly the first time I've paid attention to my body. And so as I'm showering, I noticed like some dried discharge in my nipple. And I'm sorry if this is TMI, you're gonna hear a lot more in this video. But I noticed like some dried discharge, which you typically get when your body is preparing to make milk. You have like the dried meconium or whatever that you just dried discharge right before you start breastfeeding. And I kind of chuckled to myself, and I'm like, oh, body, too little, too late, right? And so I'm like taking care of the dried, what I am assuming is like milk or discharge. And as I'm doing that, I look and I'm like, my boob looks like there's a lump there. and I touch it and it's rock hard. Rock hard. And my stomach just sunk. And I'm like, remembering back to a year ago when my doctor thought she could feel a tiny bump below my nipple because the lump was right off to the side of my areola. And I immediately like get in my towel, call my OBGYN, and I'm like, hey, I found a lump. And they're like, okay, well, we can get you in 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay. And so I spent the rest of my birthday like stressed about this lump. And then I just kept like touching it. I didn't tell anybody, only hubby. And I'm just stressed to the max about this lump. So I think it was like 2 days later, I'm getting out of the shower and it's a Friday. And I feel like I can see some red stripes or something coming out. Like maybe it's an infection of some kind. So I call back and I'm like, I'm really kind of worried about this. And they said, okay, well, if you don't mind seeing another doctor, we can fit you in today. And so I called hubby at work and I said, hey, can you come home and, you know, watch the baby, because I didn't want to involve my parents. I mean, hello, they're already stressed because they have us moving in with them right after the holidays. I didn't want them to worry about this lump, you know? And so they said, yeah, come on in. He came home and I went to the doctor by myself. Side note, if you ever are having a lump checked out, don't go by yourself. Okay, so I show up and she feels, and this is actually the doctor that was on call and doing my post cesarean section checkups, because my doctor was out of town at that time too. And so this is actually the same doctor that felt the lump a year ago. And so I'm here and she's like, well, this is kind of concerning. So you know what? Why don't you just head on over to radiology? Just, they'll see you right now. I'm like, okay. Totally oblivious. I'm like, okay, I'll go. And I had my first mammogram. You know, everybody kind of talks about mammograms and how they're such a big deal. And I'm like, oh, it's my first mammogram. Oh, you know, and the receptionist was someone I went to high school with. And she was like, oh, I'm sorry we have to see you under these circumstances. And I'm like, again, like, should I be more worried about this? Like, okay. And so I get in the room and they're asking me all these questions about family history. And I'm like, yeah, I had an aunt that died from breast cancer at a young age. Yeah, on that same line, I had a great grandmother that had a mastectomy. Oh yeah, my uncle died of pancreatic cancer. You know, like, so you're starting to go through all these, and as you're going through your history with them, you're like, I'm thinking, like, should I have brought my husband? And so they said, the radiologist is actually on site right now. You'll get results today by the end of the day. And I'm like, okay, cool. And so I had my mammogram, which, by the way, not a big deal. Go get your mammogram. Not a problem. Yes, it's awkward, but really way better than some of the other female exams, if you know what I mean. So get your mammograms, guys. So I had the mammogram and the radiologist came in and he said, so we're noticing there's a mass here, but we don't know what it is. So we're gonna take you to an ultrasound, and the ultrasound is gonna we're gonna go down one of two paths. So the first path, the ultrasound is gonna show us that it's like a cyst or something of that nature, and we just need to follow up in 6 months, you know, not a big deal. The other path you might go down after the ultrasound is that we see that it's a solid mass and we need to biopsy. And he says, are there any questions? This is the first time that it has processed to me, like, holy crap. And I kind of get choked up and I'm like, I'm just kind of overwhelmed. And he says, the ultrasound isn't quite ready for you, so take, 10, 15 minutes and we'll meet you back. So I go out to the car to give hubby an update. And I think at that point I called my mom too. And I'm just like, I'm so scared. Like, this is crazy. I'm about to go have an ultrasound to see if I need a biopsy. And so I went and had the ultrasound, which, by the way, if your mass is directly under your areola and your nipple, it's kind of uncomfortable because they're like tweaking your nipple with the little thing as they're checking. Anyway, really uncomfortable. And then she started doing an ultrasound of my lymph nodes. And that's when I was like, oh no, this probably isn't good. And I leaned over and I noticed there was like this big black patch of nothingness on the ultrasound. And I'm no ultrasound tech, but I thought, well, a big black mass of nothing. Like, I don't know. So the radiologist came back in and he pulls up that big black mass of nothingness and he says, this is your lump. This is concerning. We need to do a biopsy. Now at this point, it was like, I don't know, 3, 4 o'clock on a Friday. And he's like, we can't get it done today. So I went through that weekend and I'm like packing up. And you kind of have to have the worst case scenario in your mind. You know, worst case scenario, I have cancer. Worst case scenario, I'm dying. And I am trying to box up things to move. Like, and I'm thinking, what if I'm not the person to unpack these boxes? We're putting all these boxes into storage. What if I'm not the person to unpack them? And so I'm packing in this like hyper organized, slow, methodical, if hubby has to get all these boxes out of storage without me, like I need to have everything organized and purged and really like you're preparing for your death, I guess is the nice way to say it. But I didn't even know if I had cancer at that point, but I'm still just like trying to move along with life. We're moving in like a week at this point. And so, and we had Christmas and things to wrap and whatever. And so we had cookie baking day early that week, and I got the call. I hardly remember it, but it was earlier than we had planned. You know, God's hand was in this whole process, and I wasn't supposed to get the results until a day or two following, but I got the results when I was with my family, my brother, his family, my mom, my dad. I got the call then. So they were able to kind of keep the kids distracted while I had my moment of, okay, this is cancer, right? And so that was December 21st. And I don't know what to tell you. That was a very scary Christmas. Because what happens is after you know you have cancer, you actually don't know much. You really don't know a lot about the tumor. They have to send it away for testing to get all of like the estrogen markers and things. And then, even then, you don't know the true degree of your cancer until you have it removed and they can check your lymph nodes. And so I got cancer for Christmas. I only told a couple of people what was going on besides my immediate, like my family. And they were angels on earth. They helped me wrap presents. They helped me pack boxes because I was so far behind because I had been moving so slowly and methodically, trying to be hyper organized. And we had decorated for the holidays. This was the messiest move of all time. We ended up moving 2 days after Christmas. And honestly, my skin crawls when I think of that move. It was so disorganized and horrible. And I couldn't tell anyone what was going on. So from a distance, most the people who helped us with the move were like, what is this lady's problem? Like, why are they not ready to move? And I did field a few judgmental comments, and I thought, if you only knew, if you only knew. So anyway, we got through the holidays, we got settled at my parents' house, and then from there, it's just a long wait for surgery, and you have so many appointments. You get to see, I saw the radiation oncologist, I saw the regular oncologist, saw the surgeon, and you basically just keep going and going to all these appointments, strip off your shirt, they gotta check out the tumor. Like, by that point, there's no embarrassment about your boobs because you're showing them to everybody. Treatment decisions are based on many things. So you want to have a plan, like plans are good. I thrive on plans. But what was frustrating was that every time I had an appointment, I would hear, well, we need to hear back from pathology about your tumor. Or another thing was, well, we should really see if you have the BRCA mutation because that would really, inform some of your treatment decisions and all of that. So there was a whole lot of hurry up and wait. I didn't have a whole lot of information about my tumor while we waited for pathology. When it did come back, I found out that it was ER/PR positive, which means that it had hormone receptors, and mine was very much estrogen fed, my cancer. So, which is actually good, because then you can prevent how much it spreads by starving it of hormone. And then also I was HER2 negative, which is also good. It increases just your treatment options. But so this is actually the tumor type that many older women have. Women that get cancer postmenopause, theirs is often those same markers, that same pathology, but mine was acting very aggressively because I was postpartum still. I had been nursing, you know, my tumor was growing like gangbusters. So the other thing they wanted to know, because of my family history, they highly suggested that I get my genetic mapping done to see if I had the BRCA mutation. And I took a trip down to the big city and had my genetic testing done, and I did not have the mutation. The genetic nurse that was helping us, she explained, you know, there's however many thousands upon thousands of genes, and science has only identified this one that impacts breast cancer, but there's clearly a family link, a family history. So, you know, so I treated my cancer as if it does run in my family. And even though I didn't have the BRCA mutation, I just wanted to, for my own peace of mind, I wanted to know that I had done everything I could. So that's why I did opt to have a bilateral mastectomy. So they did talk about, because I said, yeah, I will probably want to have my ovaries removed as well, because same thing. I just wanted to know that I had done everything I could, and mine was very hormone fed. So I just wanted to starve it where I could. And they had talked to me about, you know, fertility and harvesting eggs and all of that. And when I looked into it, I thought, that's a lot of money. And by the time, but I couldn't even use those eggs until after I had been on a hormone blocker for 5 years post-cancer. So I was like doing the math, because at this point I was 33 years old. And I thought, okay, well, after treatment of a year, that'll be 34. So 39. And that's like tens of that. I mean, I don't even know how much money it would have been, and it would have been out of our pocket because it was elective. So we, you know, prayed about it and just felt like our family was complete, and we would just do the ovary removal when the time came. So treatment decision wise, that's why I decided to do what I did. And so at my first appointment with the surgeon, she was like checking out everything, and she's like, wow, I just don't love the way that your skin looks. And I really want to get a punch biopsy of your skin. Yes, my areola skin, you guys. So at this first appointment, it's like, hi, surgeon. Oh, okay, a bonus biopsy? Sounds good. So she went, we did the punch biopsy, and, you know, it was fine. Covered up and went about my life. Again, you just keep moving on. I mean, I'm a mother of 3. After I had that appointment, then I had to go to my oncologist. Now, something you need to know about my oncologist is she's very like happy, friendly. Her bedside manner was terrible. And she's not, it's hard to explain. But anyway, so I show up to the appointment and she goes, oh, well, I see we have the results of your skin biopsy, and it did come back positive for cancer cells. And I had looked at Google. Don't look at Google when you have cancer. Honestly, you guys, it's terrible. But I had Googled why they would want a skin sample and what that would mean, what a positive result of this biopsy would mean. And it wasn't good, you guys. And so I left and I said, well, what are the implications of that? And she said, I really need to talk to your tumor team. I need to talk to the other doctors before we discuss this further. One of that a positive result of that could be metastatic breast cancer. So I'm leaving this appointment thinking I am dying. The cancer has spread because, you know, skin, blood supply, cancer can travel everywhere, right? And so I went back to my parents' house, home, and lost it. I lost my crap. I thought I am dying. But then my saint of a surgeon, that woman, amazing. She called me shortly after my appointment. It was a few hours, but she called me and she's like, hey, we got the results of your skin biopsy. And I said, oh, I heard. And she's like, oh, well, before I called you, I wanted to confirm the results with the pathologist because think about it. The pathologist has this tiny little pinprick of a sample and his job is to say, yes, there's cancer here or no, there's not. And she said, your tumor is so close to the surface of your skin that I wanted to talk to the pathologist about exactly where those cancer cells were found in your sample. Was it towards the surface of your skin, showing that the cancer had spread into your skin? Or was it just that we actually nicked your tumor with the skin biopsy? Because literally my tumor was right under my skin. And so sure enough, the pathologist was like, nah, it's just the tumor. Like you just nicked the tumor in the skin biopsy. So golden. So I'm not dying, right? Good. And so I ended up, one of the really hard decisions is you have to decide what you want to do about it, like surgery wise. And with my case, because they were going to have to take the nipple and everything, the plastic surgeon gets involved too. And they said, you're definitely going to need a mastectomy on this side. And then my plastic surgeon said, well, in your case, I'm a little concerned about matching because I'm not sure we have an implant of your size. I was really flat. So basically, yeah, I could do reconstruction on this side, but my tiny little like natural boob would just not match. So I did opt to have a bilateral mastectomy with reconstruction with tissue expanders. And so I had the surgery, and this was in early February. I had my mastectomy, and it was rough. It was emotional. Yeah, it was hard. And I started chemo, because that's the other decision that they have to make is, okay, I am having surgery, I'm having a mastectomy, but they have to decide if they want to do chemo before or after. So with young patients, a lot of times they do the chemo beforehand because they want to make sure that they have the right targeted chemo. They want to see that the chemo they choose is shrinking your tumor. They want to know that it's working against your type of tumor. My tumor team opted to have me do surgery first because of the skin involvement and everything. So I had the surgery, then I started chemo. Now I had the AC chemo, which is like, that's the tough stuff. That's the stuff that makes you lose your hair. I had it in a dose-dense regimen. So typically when someone has AC chemo, they take it and then they have 3 weeks to recover before their body takes another round. And so basically, if you think about it, if your body is recovering from the hit of chemo, so is your cancer. And so they didn't want my cancer to have any time to regroup between dosages. So I had one, and then I had the following one 2 weeks later. So yeah, I was pretty sick. It was a rough time. It was a rough go of it, but we got through it. My husband's job had let him kind of put his promotion process on hold. And so they just kind of paused all the paperwork and they said, you know, be with your family, do what you need to do. And so he kept working, but he wasn't pursuing the promotion anymore. And so that was on pause. And then instead of living with my parents for a few weeks, we lived with them for 9 months while I was going through all of my chemo and everything. The beautiful thing about that was I'm a very independent person and I don't ask for help. And so like, it's hard to explain, but I would have never called my parents and been like, I'm really tired. I could just use a nap. Can you just come over and watch Ladybug for me? Like, I wouldn't have done that. But because we were there at their house, it was just kind of this seamless transition where I would be doing my very best to parent Ladybug and play with her. The big kids were at school, and, you know, I would get her situated with, you know, to play with something. And then I would just tell my parents, I'm just gonna go lay my head down for a minute. Can you keep watching, you know? And it was just seamless. You know, they would just step in when they could see that I needed help, but they would also let me parent because that was important to me. Like, I wanted my kids I didn't want them to be super impacted by my illness. And so, you know, I was so tired, you guys. I showered sitting down. I would just sit because I did get sick. I got a cold when I was going through chemo, and your immune system is being ravaged by chemo, and getting a sickness of any kind is a big deal. It takes your body a long time to get over it. So it was a common cold. I was sick with that common cold most of the time I was going through chemo. I would wake up in the morning and I would have to clear out all the phlegm, but because I was nauseous from chemo, I would throw up every morning. I had to get all that phlegm out, and, you know, ended up having to go in for fluids 1 or 2 times, and I just felt horrible for a lot of the chemo. And so, yeah, like, I would shower sitting down and just let the steam just hit me. And, you know, I remember there would be blocks on the floor in front of me, and I would be sitting in, I call it the sick chair, like my dad's big recliner. I would just sit there, and I would look at those blocks in the morning. Ladybug had been playing with them, and I'd be like, I should pick those up. And I could not will my body to just get out of the chair and pick up those blocks. Not even get out of the chair, just bend over and pick them up. Like, it's really hard to describe how sick chemo can make you. And I actually did pretty well, apparently. Like, health-wise, I managed pretty well. I gained weight while I was going through chemo, which actually is pretty common, I guess, for breast cancer patients, because you're messing with your hormones and everything. So basically, I was put into menopause at that point, like a fake menopause. I had this massive shot that would go in my belly. It's one where they have to numb you up real good because it's a big needle, a big hollow needle, and it's basically like a little worm that they inject under your skin, and it suppresses your hormones while you're so that the chemo has a better chance of working because it's suppressing your hormone. Now, I had that shot off and on through chemo. The oncology nurses are outstanding. And the thing with the AC chemo is also that they have to administer it by hand because it's very volatile, I guess. And so they have to just put it in there super slowly. So I had that going on for 2 months, 8 weeks. And then I was switched over to Taxol, which is it's an easier chemo, but it also builds up in your system. So I was feeling much better for a little while, but I had it weekly for 12 weeks. So that was another math is hard, another 3 months of chemo. So I had 5 total months of chemo, and, you know, chemo, it sucks. It's terrible. So I did chemo, and then it was time to switch over to radiation. My doctors did opt to have me do a PET scan, that's the one where they do the radioactive dye and you go through the big machine and they see if there's any evidence of distant disease, meaning has the cancer traveled. So I had that test done after my surgery because they wanted to, because my sentinel node did have micromets in it. So we knew I was going to do radiation for sure, but they just wanted to confirm that the cancer hadn't traveled anywhere else in my body. My radiation oncologist, he's a science buff and statistics, and, you know, bless his heart, but he wasn't very comforting. So after he saw the results of the PET scan, he was like, yeah, that's great, except, you know, this on your knuckle represents billions of cancer cells or something like that. And you can have, this won't show up on a PET scan. This, the size of this tip of your finger, and that represents millions of cancer cells. So he didn't take a whole lot of comfort in the PET scan like I did, but I think mainly he was just trying to reiterate that it was important for me to have radiation in this general vicinity. So I had 25 rounds of radiation every day. Radiation, it starts a clock, or it's kind of the deadline for my reconstruction. So basically, we were trying to fill up my expanders as quickly as possible, because as soon as I started having radiation, my skin would contract and they couldn't get any bigger. And so I started going for plastic surgery appointments and getting those filled. And, you know, that's a whole thing too. I mean, there's so much involved with going through cancer, you guys. So towards the end of radiation, we thought, you know what, it's time. Like I was feeling better. We knew it was coming to an end. We were approaching September, so Ladybug's second birthday. And it was like, okay, you need to start interviewing. Like we have to move on with life. And at that point, I really didn't want to go back to work because the stress was just really unhealthy for me. And knowing that, I don't know, life is too short to be that stressed. And I just had a new perspective on life. And so we for sure wanted to move forward with the promotion. So the hubby, he went to a group interview, just one. There were several stores interviewing in one location. So he went to that group interview, you know, interviewed with the different people. And then it was literally on my last day of radiation. He had come home from work early to help me celebrate that it was my last day of radiation. And while he was home, he got the phone call that we were moving on. And it sounds like a movie, you know, like a happy ending to a movie. So shortly after radiation, I did opt to have my ovaries removed. And that was a super simple procedure, but probably one of the hardest ones emotionally. And since then, I also take a pill because estrogen is produced in other parts of your body, including your body fat. And so I do take an additional pill. So most women, when they go through menopause, they have the help of some hormone replacement therapy, other little things that can kind of help soothe the symptoms of menopause. And I don't have any of that. I get to go through all the beauty of menopause and actually suppress whatever estrogen is left in my body. So that's been interesting. Honestly, it's been okay. I think the hardest thing that I have dealt with is the weight gain. My metabolism is crazy slow, and that has been hard. And then I also deal with mood swings. After treatment was over, after we had moved, I had my implants put in, and I will say that was a way more emotional process than I thought it was going to be. I felt like deflated in a way, because apparently the pocket that they build for you with the expanders, that's not the size of implant you're going to have because they want it to look natural. So there's a little bit of a pocket and they don't settle right away. And so I remember looking down and I looked like a fat man. Like I had no breast definition. And that was actually one of the lowest points in my whole cancer treatment, believe it or not. I kind of went through a little tailspin there. I thought, why did I go through all of this if this is what I was going to look like? Really disappointed. But it's fine now. They're fine. Everything's settled. Post-surgery, things take time to settle into the pocket. And now they look fine. And I did opt to have my nipples reconstructed as well. And I think that's a whole other story. So we'll save that for another time. But honestly, I chose to do it all. The only thing I'm still on the fence about is now that the skin grafts have healed from when they reconstructed my nipple, I am on the fence about possibly getting them tattooed because they are no longer pink like the pink of a new skin graft, and now they're just skin tone. And so I want to possibly get those tattooed. I'm still on the fence about that. So like I said, probably TMI, but really I think it's important for when you go through anything like this, to whatever platform you choose, and it can be public or not, but just to be there for people who are going through something similar. I found it really helpful to read and hear from other survivors. I hope that my story can reach someone who needs to hear it, that it's really hard. Cancer treatment is really, really hard. And honestly, life as a survivor is really hard. It is. And then because it's hard and you occasionally have a negative feeling, then you have the survivor's guilt come in to play. So I just want to add my 2 cents, and I will continue to share pieces of my survivorship story as I live it. I am now 3 years out from my last day of cancer treatment, and I'm coming up on the 4th year anniversary of when I found my tumor, which is this month. Because remember, I got cancer for Christmas 4 years ago. So that's my story. Thanks so much for listening. And if you want to keep following along with me, just hit subscribe, click the notification bell, and you'll be able to see when I post more about my cancer journey. In the meantime, if you want a quick few minutes, for some reason, I just felt like I want to take 1 picture a day of myself when I was going through cancer treatment. So I'll put the link below. It's just a quick video. And you can see that year of cancer, 1 picture at a time. So I'll link that below, and then I'll also link my cancer story. I did blog it as I lived it. If you prefer to read things, it has a lot more detail. If you are interested in those details, especially if you or a family member are going through cancer, I do have some articles and things that I found helpful when I was going through treatment. So I'll link it all. I'll just link it all down below. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later.